Hello, welcome back to the Bay Miwok, learning about our local Native American tribe that lived right here where we live today. Today we're going to be doing hunting and fishing, which is lesson 4. This one is actually 2 pages long, so I'm going to try and kind of move through it just a little bit quicker because I don't want this to take longer than about 15 minutes for you guys to watch the video and then do the activity. All right, so here we go. Hunting. The men of the Bay Miwok village were in charge of providing meat, fish, and fowl for their families. Fowl just means like birds, okay? So like turkeys, chickens, things like that, okay? And again, this was the men. We talked about how the women did the gathering with the acorns and the cooking and doing those activities with the children. So this is what the men are doing. So they're in charge of providing meat, fish, and fowl for their families. They ate every animal except the grizzly bear and skunk. Okay, kind of makes sense, right? Animals that were hunted were, and here are some of the animals, okay? So we've got deer, elk, antelope, rabbits, ducks, geese, and rodents. Meat was roasted over an open fire and was flavored with salt from seaweed or sea water, okay? I'll highlight that one too, roasted over an open fire. The Bay Miwok men would prepare days before a deer hunt. They would gather in a sweat house, which only men were allowed to enter. We've talked about the sweat houses before. In the center of the sweat house was a large fire pit. The men would sit around the fire and make or repair their hunting tools. They also prayed to the animal spirits for a successful hunt. They used a deer's rib bone to wipe the sweat off their bodies. When the heat was more than they could stand, they would run out and jump into a stream to cool off. Right before the hunt, the men would rub their bodies with bay leaf or mugwort to disguise their scent. This is actually really interesting. We learned this last year when we planted the sensory garden, that one of the plants in the sensory garden is actually mugwort. And also, if you go over by the Clayton Museum, the downtown Clayton Museum, there is mugwort. It's kind of like labeled around. There's like an area with bricks and stuff, kind of like a gathering area. And there's some of the plants are labeled, and one of the plants is mugwort. So that was a kind of a cool thing to know that that's what they would use. They would spread it, rub it on their bodies so that it would disguise their scent and they would blend in more. From here, I'll just go ahead and do this part here, that the Bay Miwok men would prepare days before a deer hunt. And I'll go ahead and highlight the sweat house, and then maybe that will kind of remind you of the stuff that they would do. A lot of things were just preparing for the hunt, their tools, and asking their animal spirits, their gods, the things that they believe in for a successful hunt. Okay? All right, here we go. The men used a variety of tools to trap and hunt their prey. This is what the activity will be based on today, so pay extra close attention here. So a variety of tools to hunt and trap their prey. Here are some of the tools that they would use. Bows, arrows, and spears were used to kill deer, antelope, and elk. The bows were 3 or 4 feet long. Wow, that's a pretty long bow, okay? Their strings were made from plant fibers or animal tendons. The arrows and spears were made from a hard wood such as the elderberry because its branches were very straight. A sharp point was attached to the tip of the arrow, which was carved from wood, bone, antler, or rock such as obsidian. Obsidian is that blackish rock, okay? Often when hunting deer, the hunters would wear a head of a deer that was caught in an earlier hunt. Wearing this disguise, they would hide in tall grass or bushes and wait for the deer to get close enough to shoot with their bow and arrow. Okay, so this one here was basically about bows, arrows, and spears. Even though it didn't really talk too much about a spear specifically, it did talk about kind of the arrow and what was on the top part of the arrow, okay, and how the arrow was made, carved from wood, bone, antler, or rock for the sharp point at the end. Okay, go ahead and turn to the next page. To catch small animals such as rabbits, squirrels, and rodents, they use nets made of grass fibers, traps, spears, clubs, and knives. So they used a variety of things here. So to catch the small animals such as rabbits, squirrels, and rodents, they used either nets that were made of grass fibers. They used traps, spears, clubs, and knives. Club, think of a club like a baseball bat, okay? Fire. This is an interesting tool also. Fire was used to smoke ground animals out of their tunnel homes by fanning smoke with a feather into their hole. This made the animals come running out so they could be killed. Nets were also used for trapping birds. All right, so I'll also include nets here. The nets were spread across rivers so that birds would get caught in them as they flew. Sometimes hunters stuffed a dead goose or duck with tules to fool and attract live ducks. Once trapped, the hunters could catch them. So again, lots of different strategies were used to hunt, okay, and to catch these animals. Now, fishing is a whole other thing that we're going to talk about too. So fish was another main source of food. Here's what the fishermen used. They used spears, basket traps, snares, and nets to catch fish. Let's talk about what some of these are. The fishermen would fish in creeks, rivers, and the bay, either from shore or from a boat. All right, I'm going to highlight that one too because that's important, where they were and how they did it. They stood on the shore or they went out in a boat. The boats, if they had the boats, they were made from tules, like everything else, okay? Just like their houses. The tule boats were made by tying 3 bundles of tules together. The Bay Miwok were very clever, and they learned that the soap root plant would paralyze fish if thrown into the water. The fish would float to the surface, and the fishermen would scoop them up from the water with baskets. So that's another interesting thing here that they used. So they had a specific type of plant that they knew that if they threw it into the water, and I'm not sure if it was just that it was in the water or if the fish had to kind of like touch it, but it would paralyze the fish. So basically they would just kind of stop moving and they would come up to the surface and then they could grab them. When the men fished from the shores, they used nets. The fishermen would drag the nets through the water and trap the fish. They also built special basket traps from tule to catch salmon. These traps were cone shape and acted like a funnel. Okay, so if you're kind of confused, a cone shape would look something like this. Okay, I realize that the highlighter is really light there, so I'll go kind of like this so you can see it. Okay, these traps were cone shaped and acted like a funnel. The fish would swim into the large end of the trap, so here would come the fish, okay, and would be funneled into waiting hands of fishermen. Then on the other side would be a person. My picture is very inaccurate, but then there would be a person here to catch them, okay? All right, so that's nets and basket traps. Overall, you guys, this is kind of a wrap-up paragraph here. The Bay Miwok were skilled hunters and excellent fishermen. After each hunt, Bay Miwok hunters prayed for the animal's spirit. Okay, remember, spirituality is very important. They believed that praying for the animal would help it be reborn. The Bay Miwok hunted only what they needed. Highlight this one too. Hunted only what they needed and carefully used every part of the animal they could. Nothing was ever wasted. Again, just how the Native Americans treated the animals, nature, all of that was in a very respectful manner. That is your reading for today. Your activity is called Tools of the Trade, okay? So in each of these 4 boxes, you are going to draw a tool that was used by the Miwoks, okay? And then you're going to list what materials that it was made out of, okay? List the animals that were hunted. It says color in your drawings. It's okay if you don't color them. So let's say, for example, I would like to do, maybe I'll do this basket trap one that I was talking about, okay? So if I'm going to do the basket trap, I'm going to go back to the text so I can get the information. And it says they also built basket traps from tule to catch salmon. So maybe I'll actually start with that. The basket trap material was tule, and the animals hunted was salmon. All right. Now, remember, I don't know exactly what this looked like, but I'm getting the impression that it's kind of like a funnel shaped. Okay. And it's a net, basically, right? So I'm going to kind of, I should actually say what it is. So the one that I'm doing is the basket trap. Basket trap. Okay. And then what happens is, so here we are, we're in the water. So we understand that we're in the water. And here comes the fish. And the fish goes into it. It narrows itself down, and then down on this end will be a person. Obviously it will be a man, and he will be standing in the water, and then he will be able to catch this fish and then keep it. Okay, so you're going to do this for some of the other ones. So think about like bow and arrow, spear, were ones that we talked about. You could even use the fire. Okay, nets made of grass fibers. You guys can kind of use your own information here if you want, like knives. You can kind of maybe create your own. What do you think? What materials do you think they used? We know the animals that they hunted because it's right here. It was for the smaller animals. Okay. Nets for trapping birds. That's another option. All right. So you guys can kind of take a look and try and just describe. Do 3 other ones if you copied the one that I did, or do your own 4. Like I said, you don't need to color them if you've done a detailed drawing in pencil. All right. Hopefully, again, you learned a little bit more about the local Miwok tribe.